The sun was beginning to set when Andre arrived at the restaurant that day, just as he did every day, punctually at 3 p.m. The air was warm, carrying the distinctive smell of downtown Sao Paulo, a mix of pollution and street food. The restaurant where he worked, Le Gourmet, was known for its sophistication, with a modern ambience and a demanding clientele. Located in a bustling neighborhood, the place was a gathering spot for businessmen, politicians, and celebrities. Entering through the back door, as he always did, Andre was greeted by the frantic movement of the kitchen. Pots clanging, orders being shouted, and kitchen assistants hurrying to keep up with the frenetic pace. That organized chaos was the environment where Andre felt most alive. As the head chef, he was the maestro orchestrating that culinary symphony, ensuring that every dish came out perfect, with no flaws, no delays. He put on his apron, adjusted the chef's hat on his head, and looked around, making sure all preparations for the evening service were in order. Andre always made it a point to be the first to arrive and the last to leave, a reflection of his commitment to excellence. He inspected every detail, from the freshness of the ingredients to the presentation of the dishes, ensuring everything met his strict standards. The team respected him deeply. Many of the assistants and sous chefs present had learned from him, absorbing his passion and skill. Andre was a natural leader, always willing to teach, but also demanding, expecting the best from everyone. It was rare to see him lose his temper, even in the most stressful moments. His presence instilled confidence in the team, who knew that with him in charge, the service's success was guaranteed. However, that afternoon, something felt different. Andre noticed that some of the staff avoided his eyes, murmuring among themselves. He tried to ignore the feeling that something was wrong, focusing on the tasks ahead. As he reviewed the night's special menu, Fernando, the restaurant's manager, entered the kitchen. He was a tall, thin man with a perpetually tense face, marked by worry lines. Fernando used to be more informal with Andre, but that day his posture was rigid, and his expression was serious. He called Andre for a private conversation, in what seemed like an inevitable meeting, but Andre still couldn't predict what was coming. In the small office at the back of the restaurant, Fernando hesitated before speaking. He seemed uncomfortable, as if he knew what he was about to do was wrong, but was still determined to go through with it. "Andre, I need to talk to you about something important," Fernando began, trying not to sound cold but failing miserably. Andre crossed his arms, feeling a knot in his stomach. "Sure, Fernando. What's going on?" Fernando took a deep breath before continuing. "Unfortunately, we need to make some cuts here at the restaurant. The new management wants to make some changes, and your position as head chef is being eliminated." The words came out quickly, as if Fernando wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible. Andre stood still, absorbing the shock. It didn't make sense. He had been responsible for some of the restaurant's most successful dishes, which attracted positive reviews and a loyal clientele. He felt there was something more behind that decision, but Fernando offered no further details. "Am I being fired?" Andre asked, his voice firm but with a hint of disbelief. "It's nothing personal, Andre," Fernando replied, still avoiding direct eye contact with the chef. "It's just business. The new management wants to cut costs and make changes to the restaurant's image." Andre felt a wave of emotions: anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. He knew there was nothing he could say to change the situation. He felt powerless, but he also realized that it wouldn't do any good to beg for a better explanation. His pride wouldn't allow him to lower himself further in the face of that injustice. Without saying another word, he removed his apron, folding it carefully before handing it to Fernando. With one last look at the office, which was already beginning to feel cramped and suffocating, Andre turned and left, feeling that each step took him further away from years of dedication and effort. He crossed the kitchen in silence, ignoring the curious and worried looks from his team, and exited through the back door into the warm evening that had already descended over the city. Outside, Andre paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. The world seemed to have lost its color, and the city around him, which had once been a vibrant backdrop to his life, now seemed strange and indifferent. He knew his journey there was over, But what he didn't know was that this ending would be the beginning of something much bigger and more meaningful in his life. Andre walked down the sidewalk, his mind buzzing with thoughts. He didn't know what he would do next, but one thing was certain. He wouldn't let that injustice define his fate. Even without knowing what the future held, Andre felt a small spark of determination begin to ignite in his heart. Little did he know that spark would turn into a fire that would change his life forever. After the sudden dismissal, Andre returned to his small apartment with an overwhelming sense of loss. The silence that surrounded him was deafening. He sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands, trying to process what had happened. Le Gourmet had meant everything to him. For years, the restaurant had been his stage, the place where he poured his passion for cooking and where he built his reputation. Now, all of that seemed to have been ripped away from him in an instant. The first few days were difficult. Andre isolated himself from the world, avoiding even contact with his closest friends. He needed time to digest what had happened and figure out what to do next. His mind, however, gave him no respite. Thoughts about his unjust dismissal and the hidden reasons behind it played on a loop in his head. Why him? What was the real reason behind that sudden decision? He couldn't find answers, and that only increased his frustration. As time went on, reality began to weigh even more heavily. The bills kept coming, and Andre knew he needed to find a new source of income. He started looking for jobs at other restaurants, but to his surprise, doors closed quickly. Andre sent resumes to countless establishments, from small bistros to large chains, but the responses were always negative. Some chef friends tried to intervene, but even they seemed hesitant, as if something was preventing them from helping. It was then that Andre began to suspect that Fernando was involved. He knew the manager had a vast and influential network of contacts in the culinary industry. It was possible that Fernando was spreading rumors or purposely making it difficult for Andre to get hired elsewhere. This possibility made Andre even more frustrated and determined not to be defeated by these intrigues. Despite everything, Andre's passion for cooking never waned. Cooking was the only thing that made him forget, even temporarily, the problems he was facing. He spent hours in his small kitchen, experimenting with new recipes and refining old ones. It was as if he were trying to reconnect with a part of himself that had been wounded. One night, while preparing a simple meal for himself, Andre had an epiphany. He remembered how he had started his career, washing dishes in a crowded kitchen, with no money, no fame, just a desire to learn and grow. Back then, he had nothing but his passion and determination. And it was with that he had built everything he had, brick by brick. It was at that moment that Andre realized he might be looking at the situation the wrong way. Instead of trying to go back to what he had before, maybe it was time to create something new. He had learned a lot over the years, and perhaps now was the time to use that knowledge to forge his own path. The idea of opening his own restaurant began to form in his mind, but at the same time, it seemed like a distant dream. Andre knew that starting a restaurant from scratch would be a monumental challenge. He didn't have much money saved up, and opening a business involved a series of costs. Rent, renovations, equipment, ingredients, hiring staff, marketing. The list seemed endless. But the more he thought about it, the more the idea made sense. He wanted a space where he could express his vision, where he could cook without the restrictions imposed by others. A place where he could honor his roots and create an experience that was truly his own. In the days that followed, Andre began researching locations for the restaurant. He couldn't afford to rent a space in an upscale neighborhood, so he started looking in emerging areas where prices were more affordable and where there might be less competition. After weeks of searching, he found a small space in a neighborhood on the rise. The place was modest, with a simple facade and an interior that needed a lot of work, but Andre saw potential there. It was the kind of place where he could build something authentic, something that reflected his identity. With the location decided, Andre began to think about the concept of the restaurant. He wanted something that celebrated Brazilian cuisine, but also incorporated the techniques and influences he had learned over the years. He started drafting the menu, thinking of dishes that evoked memories of his childhood, but with a modern and innovative presentation. It was important to him that each dish told a story, that each meal was a unique experience. To get the necessary money, Andre took out a small loan from the bank, but he knew that wouldn't be enough. So he started selling some of his personal belongings and also asked for help from a few close friends. Although proud, Andre accepted the help, knowing he would need all the support he could get to make his dream come true. He also began doing some of the manual labor, renovating the space with his own hands. He spent days painting walls, assembling furniture, and installing equipment. Every effort, every drop of sweat, was a promise to himself that he wouldn't give up, no matter how difficult it was. During this process, Andre met Dona Marlene, an elderly woman who lived in the house next door to the future restaurant. She was a simple woman, but full of wisdom and stories to tell. Upon hearing about Andre's plans, Marlene was very enthusiastic and began visiting him daily, bringing coffee and some treats she made herself. She also shared old family recipes, many of which Andre adapted for the new restaurant's menu. "You know, Andre," Marlene said during one of her visits, "food has a way of bringing people together, of healing wounds that words can't reach. I see in you someone who has the ability to do that. Don't let the difficulties get you down. I'm sure your restaurant will be a success because it's already filled with love and dedication." Those words touched Andre deeply. Dona Marlene became a sort of mentor and friend, always bringing words of encouragement when he needed them most. With her help and the support of a few other neighborhood residents, Andre began to feel that perhaps he was on the right path. Finally, after months of hard work, the restaurant was ready to open. Andre named it Raices, Roots, a simple name, but one that carried deep meaning. For him, the name represented not just his own journey, but also the traditions and stories he wanted to share through his cooking. The grand opening was scheduled for a Saturday night, and as the date approached, Andre felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. He knew this was just the beginning of a new journey, but he also understood that success was not guaranteed. However, he was prepared to face whatever came his way. For now, he was at peace with his decision to forge his own path. Raices, born out of a desire to start over and a determination not to be defeated by hardship, was about to open its doors. Andre was ready to share with the world not just his food, but also his story of resilience and courage. The morning of the opening day arrived with a different kind of brightness. The sun seemed warmer, and the air was filled with anticipation. Andre woke up early, his heart pounding with anxiety. The previous night had been long. He had barely slept, his mind occupied with going over every detail. Raices was his creation, a piece of his soul, and he wanted everything to be perfect. The small restaurant, which he had transformed with such effort, seemed almost magical that day. The simple yet welcoming facade featured a newly installed sign with the name Raices in elegant cursive letters. The windows, adorned with plants and fresh flowers, invited passersby to peek inside the cozy interior, where lightwood tables were arranged with simple yet elegant floral arrangements. Everything reflected Andre's good taste and his passion for creating an environment that was both sophisticated and accessible. Andre spent the first hours of the day checking every detail. The kitchen, though small, was immaculate, with every utensil and ingredient in its place. He checked the inventory, ensured the freshness of the ingredients, and gave final instructions to his small team. In addition to Dona Marlene, who had decided to help with the opening, Andre had two young assistants, Joao and Clara, both neighborhood residents who were eager for the opportunity to learn from him. Joao, a tall and slender young man, had an infectious energy and was quick with his hands. He had worked as an assistant in other smaller restaurants, but had never had the chance to learn from such an experienced chef as Andre. Clara, on the other hand, was more reserved but extremely dedicated and attentive to details. She loved making desserts and was excited about the new techniques Andre had taught her. The small team was united by the excitement of being part of something special, and everyone knew that day would be decisive. While adjusting the final touches in the kitchen, Andre was surprised by a visit from some neighborhood residents who came to wish him good luck. Among them was Mr. Joachim, a shoemaker who had his shop nearby. He handed Andre a small figure of Saint Benedict, the patron saint of cooks and humble workers. "It's a tradition in my family," said Mr. Joachim with a warm smile. May Saint Benedict bless you and protect Raices. This restaurant is already part of our community, and we're all rooting for you. Andre was moved by the gesture. He accepted the gift with gratitude and placed it on a small makeshift altar in the kitchen, a reminder that he wasn't alone on this journey. The local community was on his side, and that gave him renewed strength. As the afternoon wore on, Andre began to feel a growing tension in the air. He knew everything was ready, but he couldn't avoid the anxiety. What if no one came? What if the dishes didn't impress? These thoughts swirled in his mind, but he quickly pushed them away, focusing on the final preparations. Just before opening time, Andre gathered his team for a brief talk. I want you all to know how grateful I am that you're here today, he began, his voice filled with emotion. This restaurant isn't just mine, it's ours. I know you've all given your best to make Raices a success, and today is the day we show the world what we can do. Remember, we're not just serving food, we're sharing our story, our roots. Let's make this night unforgettable. Andre's words were met with smiles and determined nods. Joao and Clara were visibly nervous but also excited. Dona Marlene, always wise, touched Andre's shoulder and whispered, "Everything will be fine, my son. You've planted the right seeds. Now it's time to reap the rewards." When the doors of Raices finally opened, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The first customers began to arrive, drawn both by curiosity and by the reputation the restaurant was already starting to build in the neighborhood. Some were neighbors, people Andre had met during the months of preparation. Others were visitors from other parts of the city, attracted by the early positive reviews Raices was receiving on social media and small food blogs. Andre personally greeted each customer, showing them the warmth and hospitality he had planned for Raices. He made sure to explain the dishes on the menu, describing the origin of the ingredients and the story behind each recipe. The Raices menu was a tribute to his roots and the diversity of Brazilian cuisine. Dishes like fish maquica, baião de dois, and carne seca escondidinho were among the night stars, all prepared with subtle touches of sophistication that Andre had perfected over the years. The kitchen, though small, was bustling with activity. Joao and Clara worked with focus and speed, following Andre's directions as he commanded the service with the calm of a veteran. Each dish that left the kitchen was meticulously prepared and sent to the dining room with a final touch that reflected Andre's care and passion. The customers were impressed. The food, rich in flavor and history, combined with the welcoming atmosphere, made Raices a unique experience. Soon, the compliments started pouring in, both in person and on social media. People were taking photos of the dishes, sharing their impressions, and even before the service ended, Raices was already becoming a hot topic in the city. At the end of the night, when the last customer left the restaurant, Andre felt a wave of relief and satisfaction. He leaned back against the kitchen counter, exhausted but happy. Joao, Clara, and Dona Marlene were also tired, but there was a sparkle in everyone's eyes. "We did it," Andre said with a tired smile. "It was just the first step, but we did it." Dona Marlene, ever wise, smiled and said, "The first of many, Andre. You've done more than open a restaurant. You've built something that will grow and thrive because you put your heart into it." As the team began cleaning and organizing the restaurant for the next day, Andre stepped outside. The cool night air enveloped him, and he took a deep breath, looking at the Raices facade illuminated by the soft glow of the external lights. He knew the journey was just beginning, but for the first time in months, he felt like he was in the right place, doing what he was born to do. Raices was more than just a restaurant. It was a symbol of resilience, of roots that deepened and blossomed, even in the most adverse conditions. And with that first successful night, Andre knew he had planted the seeds for something big, something that would continue to grow and inspire both him and everyone around him. The opening night of Raices was a success beyond expectation. Andre was nervous, but the support from the local community made all the difference. The restaurant was filled with curious residents who wanted to try the dishes created by the chef. The mix of traditional flavors with modern techniques won over the palates, and soon word of mouth began to spread. In no time, Raices became a meeting point in the neighborhood. People from different parts of the city started showing up, attracted by the praise the restaurant was receiving on social media and food blogs. Andre finally felt that his effort was being rewarded. Every dish served, every compliment received, was a reminder that he was on the right path. As the months passed, the success of Raices only grew. Andre hired a small team, mostly made up of people from the community who shared his passion for cooking. The restaurant wasn't just a business, but an extension of his identity, and he made sure to maintain a welcoming and inclusive environment. However, not everything was perfect. The success of Raices began to bother some people, especially Fernando, Andre's former boss. The restaurant where Andre had worked began to suffer from the loss of customers, and the blame fell on the new establishment that was standing out in the city. Fernando, driven by envy and resentment, began spreading rumors about Andre. He claimed that Raices was a cheap copy of other restaurants and insinuated that Andre had stolen recipes from his former job. These lies began circulating, but initially, they didn't affect Raices' success. Andre, on the other hand, felt the weight of these accusations. He knew that Fernando was trying to harm him, but he was determined not to let it get to him. He redoubled his efforts to ensure that every dish served was impeccable and that the restaurant's atmosphere remained welcoming. One day, during a busy service, Fernando showed up at Raices. His presence caught Andre by surprise, but he kept his composure. Fernando, with a cynical smile, made sure to remind Andre of how he had been fired, insinuating that Raices' success was temporary and that it would soon be forgotten. "I always knew you were just an amateur, Andre. Enjoy it while you can because it won't last," Fernando taunted. Andre, maintaining his calm, replied, "Fernando, what I'm building here is based on hard work and passion. Things you'll never understand. Raices isn't just a restaurant. It's an expression of our culture and our roots. And that's something no one can take from me." The tension between the two was palpable, but Fernando left the restaurant with a look that promised future trouble. Andre knew that wouldn't be their last confrontation. Over time, Fernando's actions became more aggressive. He began using his influence to try to sabotage Raices, spreading lies to suppliers, and even attempting to bribe members of Andre's team. While some of these tactics had temporary success, the solid foundation Andre had built with his loyal team and customers prevented the restaurant from collapsing. However, a crisis emerged when one of Andre's main suppliers, pressured by Fernando, decided to break the contract. This meant that Raices would be left without essential ingredients for its most popular dishes. Andre had to be creative and seek alternatives, which led to new innovations on the menu, but also a constant struggle to maintain the quality that customers expected. Despite the difficulties, Andre kept the restaurant running, but finances began to tighten. The impact of Fernando's actions was becoming hard to ignore, and Andre knew he had to do something to resolve the situation once and for all. While dealing with the daily challenges, Andre discovered something that changed the course of his fight. One night, while organizing the restaurant's documents, he found an old contract from when he worked at Fernando's restaurant. The document was poorly filed among his personal papers, but upon rereading it, Andre realized there was a clause that Fernando had never mentioned. Any recipe developed by Andre while working there would be Andre's intellectual property if he left the restaurant without just cause. This meant that all the recipes Fernando accused him of stealing actually belonged to Andre by right. Fernando had never mentioned this clause, probably counting on Andre never reading the contract again. Now Andre had an ace up his sleeve. With this newfound knowledge, Andre consulted a lawyer who confirmed that he had a strong case against Fernando. The lies and defamation Fernando was spreading could be legally challenged, and Andre had a chance to clear his name once and for all. With the support of his lawyer, Andre decided to take action. They filed a lawsuit against Fernando for defamation, breach of contract, and harassment. The news of the lawsuit spread quickly, and many were shocked to learn of Fernando's true intentions. During the trial, the truth came to light. Fernando was exposed as a greedy and vindictive businessman who tried to destroy Andre's success out of pure envy. The evidence presented by Andre, including the contract with the forgotten clause, was enough to convince the court. The judge not only ruled in Andre's favor, but also ordered Fernando to pay significant damages for moral and material losses. Moreover, Fernando was publicly humiliated, and his reputation in the culinary world was ruined. With the victory in court, Andre felt a huge weight lifted off his shoulders. Reizes not only survived the adversities, but thrived. The story of the black chef who fought against injustice and won inspired many people, and the restaurant became a symbol of resilience and overcoming. Reizes continued to grow, attracting not only local residents but also tourists and food critics. Andre received awards for his innovation and commitment to the authenticity of Brazilian cuisine. He expanded the restaurant, opened new locations in other neighborhoods, and began giving lectures and cooking classes, sharing his story and recipes with the world. In the end, what started as an impossible dream became a reality larger than Andre had ever imagined. He proved to everyone, including himself, that determination, talent, and faith in his roots were enough to overcome any obstacle. As for his former boss, Fernando, he faded into obscurity, a victim of his own arrogance and envy. Life gave Andre the justice he deserved, and the chef, now recognized as one of the best of his generation, continued to walk a path of success and inspiration.